outside of you and anybody on Wu-Tang, who's the greatest rapper from a lyrics, like a wordsmith perspective in hip hop history, or some of the greatest? Maybe some candidates.
Let's name a few. I got to put Nas in that category. You know, we got a chessboard in front of us, and one of the greatest chess players, the youngest grandmaster, before I think Carlson was Bobby Fischer.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so let's use Bobby Fischer as American, one of the greatest American chess players. And of course, Susan Polgar may have tied his record as the youngest grandmaster, and she's the youngest female grandmaster, I think, to date. But he was a master at what, 14?
Yeah, something like that.
Right? So now, to me, I met Nas when he was 15. And he was already a master lyricist. It takes about 10 years to become a master lyricist. So by the time the world heard Wu-Tang, most of us had 10 years of rapping in us already. Mm-hmm. So that's why you met us at mastery level. The Jizza was already a master when Nas was a master, but Jizza was 21, Nas was 15.
So Nas is like the Mozart of rap.
Yeah, or just Bobby Fischer.
Just Bobby Fischer, just born something in him, or maybe those early years, just because he's not just good at the lyrics, he goes deep with it.
Yeah.
Just like you. So he's like there's depth. It's not just like mastery of the word smithing. It's just the message you actually send across.
Information.
Yeah.
Into a small phrase. Right? That's the whole thing of energy. How do we condense all that energy into this so that it could fuel that? And he's definitely one of those artists, MCs that does that. And he was doing it at 15. You know, like I said, I'm thinking I'm 4 or 5 years older than Nas. So I was always feeling, my confidence of what I was doing, but I was like, this kid is only 15.
I got to step up my game.
Yeah. When he turned 19, then we got Illmatic.
Yeah.
How does this record go from a 17-year-old rapping about what he's living in New York to being taught in classes, having books and articles written about it even 30 years later?
The Hip Hop Archive was established at Harvard University to support art, culture, and knowledge of hip hop and its followers. The Nasir Jones Hip Hop Fellowship is designed to provide students and artists with the opportunity to demonstrate that education is real power.
Next on Great Performances.
This is what it's about.
Thank you for giving me 20 years of your ears.
2 decades after the release of his groundbreaking record, Illmatic, hip-hop superstar Nas teams up with the National Symphony Orchestra to re-envision his iconic album in a special anniversary performance at the Kennedy Center.
Illmatic is probably the most important album in hip-hop. It is the dash. It is 79 to 94, 94 and on. And I'm not even the biggest Nas fan, but I got to give respect due because the MC was born. Rakim and them, they was exploring. We didn't know how long it was going to last. We didn't know hip-hop was going to... When Biggie said we didn't know hip-hop was going to take it this far, he was talking about Rakim and Big Daddy Kane.
So do you
when did we know hip-hop was going to take it this far? 1994.
It's 1994 and hip-hop has cemented itself into the mainstream. In this series, we'll be discussing why this year is regarded as one of the greatest years in the history of rap. From New York icons like Nas and Biggie to the arrival of Southern rap in the form of Outkast or UGK, 94 was one of the biggest years in rap music. We'll look back at these classic albums, sharing why they're so great and why their impact meant so much to the culture.
Illmatic or Ready to Die?
Illmatic.
Okay.
Illmatic, in my opinion, is the greatest hip-hop album ever.
To me, that's one of the...
How old was he when he did that? 17?
I think 17. I believe 17, which means, remember, we had to record things a year in advance back then, which means he probably recorded it at 16.
Yeah, some of those songs before, it was like demos.
Right. So these with these dumb lyrics, they ain't got no excuse.
He had the dream team, though. He had...
Primo, Pete Rock.
Yeah, but they ain't write his lyrics. He had to still write those lyrics, Scott.
Art Pro.
Lyrics.
Yeah.
Production-wise, he had a dream team.
I want to give a quick shout-out to that nigga Nas, you know what I'm saying, real quick. Queensbridge Nas, yes, Escobar. A lot of people may not know, or if you do know, that was his event, him and his company's event, Mass Appeal at Yankee Stadium the other day. And for them to invite me and make me a part of Hip Hop 50 shit that they put together, you know, knowing the history that we had in the past, that was really big of him to respect what I got going on as my contribution to hip hop the last 25 years I've been doing it, and knowing the past we had, whether it's beef or not beef or just music, whatever it is, I appreciate the invite from probably the greatest lyricist in our time, in our era. So
there's too many moments that he had for me to even be able to count them. One of the reasons that I picked Halftime though is because there's some rhyme schemes on there that most rappers to this day probably can't do. And that's one of the things that has made Nas so great over his career. Like when he because when I blast the herb, that's my word. I'll be slaying them fast, doing this, that, and the third. But chill past the entree and let's lay a back up at John Jay and hit a matinee. He was rhyming entire sentences. And I'm like, what the is this? You know what I'm saying? Like, yo, Illmatic, I can't even, I mean.
Somebody that, I was like anything else, I'd see bums on the street, or not bums, it's a bad word, but I see like dope fiends on the street and wonder how they end up that way. And I wonder what the story was. It was the Vietnam veterans or just some people with bum luck who just wound up drug deals and that turned dope fiends, you know what I mean? So I always wanted to know, like, why were things the way they were? You know, I just didn't wake up. I wasn't just born and things were like crazy. You know what I mean? It's like there was something that started this. So I always wanted to get to the bottom of something, and that meant like finding out who I was and where I come from and how come things are the way they are in the world, racism and ignorance, and you know, why were things this way? And I hear answers that people would have, people that's supposed to be really smart and they really didn't have much, you know, to say, whether it was a politician on television or it was teacher in school. You know, no one really touched on why society was the way it was at this young age I was at. You know, no one I was around except for at home. You know, I would have books there laying around that I hated, and they just be sitting there, and I see a book about Egypt, and I see a book about Africa, or I see a book about math, you know, whatever it was like something that was more than what was being taught in my class was always in the home. It was always there. So I would pick up something here and there.
Welcome back to my channel. It's your boy, Champion Mode here, and this is Ape Crazy TV. I just wanted to do a follow-up video on the whole Jim Jones and Nas thing. I know it's not a real beef. It's really Jimmy punching up in the air, reaching. But Nas responded in the subtle sense. I guess it's the most classiest way one can respond to, like, you know, an essence of those guys. I look at Jimmy as a bottom feeder compared to Nas, and I'll give context and clarity on that. You know, Jimmy's a very successful guy. He's done his thing within the hip hop or rap culture, I'm going to say. I look at hip hop and rap as two different genres in essence. Rap is a part of hip hop, but rap can be as vulgar and detrimental to society. You know, hip hop, I tend to look at it differently because it can be used as a tool to uplift and build and teach. But back to Nas and Jimmy, Nas responded in such a classy way. He says in one of his songs, I do believe is Death Row East on King's Disease 2, where he responds, it says, "We the smartest, not the loudest. Came up out the project houses." I do believe, yeah, we the smartest, not the loudest, came up out the project houses. Like, and it just makes sense, especially when you're from poverty, the inner city, the ghetto, however you want to put it, coming from where American blacks were given to reside in when it comes to America. So, you know, you got to duck all the adversity, death, bad schooling, stereotypical, you know, all of those things you have to overcome. And in my opinion, Nas is that blueprint, you know, because it wasn't always negative hip hop from him. It wasn't let's glorify the streets. It was all he uplifted. He uplifted. Like I was reading certain books because of Nas. Nas had a heavy influence on my life, but I can say this, going back to high school, a lot of people didn't listen to Nas. It was a very select few of an intellectual type coming from where I came from that listened to Nas. Because you know, I had a family member one time, my cousin, he asked me, he's like, yo, cuz, what do Nas be talking about sometime? And this is in high school. I was in high school in the early 2000s. And it, you know, now that was almost 22, 23 years ago, and I think about it now and I'm like, man, like it's just it's crazy to me. But you know, just thinking about Jimmy talking about this is the most Nas has ever been viral and since Jay-Z. Okay. All right. Even if that was valid or true, which is it isn't, the way Nas is capitalizing, used to capitalize off of Jimmy when how he released this video is golden. And you know, I'll give Jimmy his props and say, you know, he does have to mention Nas' name in order to go viral, and it's genius, but he has to mention someone else's name in order to go viral, in order to put himself in a stratosphere of, you know, getting clicks and getting views and getting interviews. People are interviewing him because excuse me, people are interviewing him because of him saying this controversial stuff. Like we all know, most hip hop heads know, like he's just jabbering. He's a jabberjaw right now. You know, he even said he was stronger than Shannon Sharp. I don't believe that for a second. Even Shannon Sharp being in his 50s, there's no comparison there. You know what I mean? Those athletes they're a different level of strength. You know what I mean? And Shannon Sharp looks like he's in shape. So he may be old. He looks like he's in shape. But let's get into this video of Nas' response to Jimmy, or Nas capitalizing off the viral sensation of what Jimmy has going on without even saying a word. And then we're going to come back to some commentary.
The future is not something you wait for. It's something you build. It lives in the hands of the doers, the dreamers, the people who refuse to stand still. Resorts World is more than a casino. It's energy. It's opportunity. It's hope for the borough. A second chance for some, a first step for many. It's where community gathers. Not just to win, but to build a future once imagined. This isn't just business. This is legacy. And now, it's time. Time to invest in us. Because the future doesn't ask for permission. It moves with purpose. From our chairman to our newest employee, we're committed to Queens. And in Queens, the future is now.
Okay, so we've seen the video. That came out maybe 3 or 4 days ago, and you know, amongst all the Jim Jones and Nas controversy, you know, the guy, the Billboard take he had. I'm talking about Jimmy here, talking about the #1 hits. Once again, I'm going to say this: "Ballin'" is one of the main songs I know Jimmy for. Some of his features, I liked him on DJ Unk. Walk It Out remix, Certified Gangsters with the Game. It's certain tracks I do like from Jimmy, but overall, there's no comparison. Nas' whole catalog is, and like I said, I study Illmatic later, but Illmatic is not my favorite album from Nas. It's not. Some of my favorite music from Nas didn't come till the 2000s. I mean, if I was to say what was the pivotal album, I would say It Was Written with, If I Ruled the World, Street Dreams, The Message, where he raps about a gun, being the life of a gun from the perspective of the gun. Like he, his talent was on showcase from day one. Here's another. It's just crazy. Here's another fun fact though. Tupac, Jay-Z, and Nas are the most widely studied academically hip hop artists to date. Tupac, Jay-Z, and Nas. Tupac being number one, having college courses about him. Jay-Z as well, capitalism, his overall career and how he broke into the corporate sector. And then Nas, as far as his Illmatic is actually studied at Harvard. They have a whole course dedicated to the album Illmatic because of its pivotal moment in 1994. So when you think about these things, I don't know if these rappers set out to do that. Tupac hasn't been here for it's been 20, almost 30 something years. Tupac hasn't been here, and they're still studying him for his political science, his American black culture, his poetry, things like that. I think Nas is personally my opinion, Nas is in the same category as Tupac, just not as radical. So I say he's more of finesse in how he teaches within his music to get his message across. But I do believe they're in the same category as far as what they stand for. It blows my mind. Jimmy, I do feel as though there's an envy there with Jim Jones, because he's smarter than what he portrays. You know what I mean? I heard him talking about gang members and being a blood and using that as a fraternity and comparing it to like college fraternities and things. And in essence, I agree with him to a degree on that. But I believe he plays dumb to do what he does. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, man. I really didn't have much more to say about this, but I do want to say, as far as hip hop is concerned, there's no comparison. No comparison. And also, an honorable mention amongst artists that are studied in colleges is going to be Kendrick Lamar, The Pimp a Butterfly, Lauryn Hill, The Miseducation, Public Enemy, Everything They Were About, and Kanye West for his Dark Twisted Fantasy album. They actually studied these artists. Public Enemy was beyond was ahead of their time. And maybe they weren't because of what was going on, but I do believe they were like the blueprint to a degree for a Tupac and a Nas because of them going against the power structure that was anti-black, and you had the segregation, Jim Crow, and all of that. Just American history, hip-hop being an American-made culture by American blacks is just interesting. So, I put together a video of other artists and other people of influence, like RZA from the Wu-Tang, a couple of other artists giving praise to Nas, like Eminem. There's a video where 50 Cent raps one of his favorite verses from Nas, and it's the first verse of The Message. And Cameron, Irv Gotti, a bunch of guys just giving Nas his accolades and what he meant to the culture. So, it's right after this. Check the video out. You guys will like it, I do believe. And yeah, it's your boy Champion Mode, man. I'm out of here. Thanks for tuning in. Give me your opinions. Like, subscribe, dislike if you dislike the video, and just look forward to more. Thanks, man. Peace.